My campaign against drug will not stop until the last pusher and the last drug lord are Hitler massacred 3 million Jews. Now, there's a 3 million drug addicts. There are. I'd be happy to slaughter them. At least, if Germany had Hitler, the Philippines would have, but, my victims, I would like to be all criminals to finish the problem of my country and save the next generation. What you do, guys, I get to answer it. So what you believe was the story, I will adapt it. Kaya lang na mamaniwala ako doon sa mga sino paniwalaan ko? Yung police ko, yung NBI ko, sila. Now, later, they said that there was a rout and the police, they were shot out. Sabi ko, I believe the police. Why? Because they are my subordinates. The story of the people whom I give the orders to operate is what I ordered them to do. Kaya ito sila, poprotektahan ko. And if there's somebody who will go to jail, it's me. I will assume full legal responsibility.
Salamat ho, 5 minutes before 12 midnight.
It's a weird soundtrack to snooze by, and it's a weird place to sleep, too. The press room of the Manila police station and the photographers on the night shift who need a lot more rest than they're about to get. They're competitors who share tips,
4 kilometers from here.
share cars, watch each other's backs.
You okay?
They have to, because the murders keep happening.
Sir, may patay po, may patay na nakitang patay yun. Ha? May nakitang patay na po ngayon.
You get lost. Okay, who's this next victim? Who's this?
Yeah. If the pack has a leader, the leader is Rafi Lerma.
When you begin to feel that sometimes there's no more killings in the past week for so many days, maybe this is stopping, right? Then this happens again.
It's been hard hunting down the stories of the more than 7,000 people killed in the Philippines drug war since last summer. Worse, he says, though, would be to look away.
I don't want that day to happen when everyone loses interest and you see no one's covering this anymore.
Or just sees it as normal.
Yeah.
When the Philippines president made that promise, arguing his nation could become a narco state if drug use isn't stopped, masked men, sometimes police, sometimes just thugs, started killing with abandon. Murderers who suffocated their victims by wrapping their heads in tape, often writing pusher or addict on signs left with the bodies. When corrupt cops were exposed for some of these killings, the offensive was put on hold. But it's back. Official orders to police are to try to just arrest suspects. But the blood still flows.
Police reported
Lights ahead.
Crime scene here already, and they're going to process the crime scene. Thank you.
And it sometimes looks like this, and sounds like stunned silence. A drive-by shooting by masked men. Police quick to say they happened to find a packet of shabu or meth on the victim. Vincent Go, as much a regular as Rafi. He says you hear the claim often of finding drugs. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not.
Anybody ever held to account for these murders? Never.
Until now, no. No, that's the sad thing about it.
Do you think that the deaths are still being counted properly, or do
No.
you think no?
I think people lost count of the killings right now.
Real numbers are suddenly hard to come by. Newspapers that once diligently tracked the deaths don't seem to anymore, and official updates on cases are rare. There certainly isn't much news on a death Vince can't shake. Is following up on this night.
And this one is Christina.
Christina Padual's death.
When she was shot, she was slumped on the chair.
His photo of the moment is hard to take.
During things like this, everybody seems to be afraid to talk. They should have seen everything, but they refuse to talk to the media.
By the time he and the other photographers got to the scene, police had already announced they'd found traces of shabu on Christina. Another man nearby was shot 10 times. She was hit twice while sitting eating watermelon.
And that's her last meal. And nobody's talking, so it's really hard who was the real target. It's really hard to say who was the real target of the shooting.
Add the absence of answers to the family's pain here at her wake. The photographers keep an eye on a lot of families. Christina's is a real concern. Like most of the grieving from the drug war, they struggle to make ends meet. Which explains this. In full view of the coffin, strangers mostly, not really mourners. They've been gambling for days and nights, keep most of the winnings. Christina's family gets a small cut. For many of the poorest families, this is the only way to pay for the funeral.
So, here's the really sad math on this. In order to get her body back, Christina's father had to pay the funeral home up front about $700. That's money he really didn't have. All this fundraising from the gambling is supposed to pay for it, but the best they seem to be able to do is about $10 a day.
See that interment notice? The date has been left blank because until there's money for the funeral, the family couldn't book one. And she's already been dead a few weeks. This is where one particular photographer is a lifeline. Brother June, they call him. He does double duty, also working with the church.
He takes on a lot, this guy.
Yeah, he takes on a lot, and you usually see him asleep inside the car because he has duties during the morning in the church duties, and at night still goes out with us.
When Brother June's colleagues on the night shift explained Christina's case, the congregation at his church raised the rest of the money for the funeral. He's here to deliver it. Now they can bury her. He's also offering legal help, but the family doesn't want it.
They are afraid because they don't know who's the killer. They don't know what's the motivation.
Are they going to file a case, do you think?
No. It's not in their mind. They want to forget everything.
So there may never be answers about Christina's death. Back at the police station, Brother June's brief chance to sleep. For the other photographers, it's a moment to really look carefully at their pictures. The closer the shot, they say, the bigger the clues they always seem to find.
His hands was bound.
Police say this man was killed because he pulled that gun. But look at the man's wrist in Rafi's picture.
It looks like cuff marks. It just looks unbelievable.
How do you pull a gun if your hands are cuffed?
See in the photo.
It's hardly a unique image in this drug war. Flip through their files, and the same scenario pops up at scene after scene.
And there's a lot of blood on the hands, both hands actually. Both hands, but look at the gun. It's clean.
When you look at this, that suggests what to you?
Well, I cannot say. It raises a lot of questions. Who's telling the truth?
This drug war needs more understanding. It's not black and white. And they're just pushers. Kill them. No. They are humans. You have to, well, look at them as humans.
But Rafi and Vince and the others can't always make people feel what they feel. Certainly not those in charge.
The complaint is utterly baseless. You know who are afraid of the Duterte presidency? Only the criminals, the scoundrels, and the corrupt politicians. No, I'm not trying to say it. I'm saying it.
This is Salvador Panelo, President Duterte's legal advisor, in the middle of a live radio interview.
Hi there. I'm Adrian Arsenault. Do you worry about Filipinos waking up to see an image like that?
He's seen the pictures of Cristita and the others, but isn't ready to be outraged.
But no relatives will even admit that if that woman was involved in drugs, they will never admit that. So we don't know whether it's a member of the syndicate who did that. What you hear from them is that, oh, we're poor, oh, we're innocent. But that's not true.
You don't sound terribly compassionate to people who might be poor and innocent. I mean, why is a
There
victim
may
any
be
less
people who
credible
have
than
been
a police
killed
officer?
in the process. In other words, those are collateral damages. Even if they're shooting each other, and suddenly a passerby, an innocent one, poor one, dies, I don't think you can blame that to the police.
He speaks with the confidence of a man who is sure President Duterte and his drug war remain wildly popular no matter what questions get asked. And in the big picture, he's right. It's interesting because this drug war doesn't seem to be killing the drug lords, but low-level users, the poor who live in these densely populated neighborhoods. Maybe someone's killing them to keep them quiet. So you might think these places would be full of rage about Duterte, but they're not. His popularity is overwhelming. People talk of feeling safer now, even right down there at Cristita's wake. On the day of Cristita's funeral, even the woman cooking for the mourners talks about the drug war as a type of cleaning house.
Here in our place for how many months? Not so good.
Is it better now?
Oh yeah. Even if you are going here midnight, no people will with you. No people. No harassment, no ano.
So it's better. His drug war has made it better for you.
Oh, yeah.
Several weeks since they lost her, Cristita's family is finally able to bury her. Where they head to is an overcrowded cemetery crammed now with the victims of the drug war. It's a frenzy. Families colliding, crushed for space. It's hard to eke out time for rituals here. They'll lease the burial compartment for just 5 years. After that, they'll have to pay yearly to keep her body here. Many can't afford to. Cristita's cousin Bernice can't seem to take this all in.
Many drug lords. I wish that all that killed, not her, because she's so funny girl. She's so nice, and she's kind for us.
It is blazing, dizzyingly hot for all the mourners and those photographers. When we come back, they're about to embark on a night that will rattle them.
Okay, we'll get out.
Will rattle everyone.
He's really little.
Yeah.
So, papunta na ba tayo sa beachboard?
Careful, the Manila night shift photographers may be used to what they see, but not everyone is.
Papunta ng Malabon beachboard. May bayan.
Finding the location of this next body isn't easy. Rafi is perplexed as everyone else. And really, he doesn't have to be doing this.
Are you technically still on leave?
Yeah. After the funeral, I gave them photos. But I didn't put my name on it, actually.
What about this cop car here?
His worried bosses have told him to get off the night beat.
It's going somewhere.
Bago maglapo-lapo, bridge.
But he can't shake the feeling he has a responsibility to be a witness.
Okay, we'll get out.
even when it means a moment like this. Arriving at a scene that's hard to make out at first. There's just a tiny clump on the ground near the garbage.
God, he's really little.
Yeah. He was made to kneel. See, he was made to kneel.
Yep.
Then shot in the head.
And you said you think he's just 16?
Yeah, the family's over there.
He looks really...
They said that they were searching for him for 5 days already. Then the barangay said they heard a shot here, and that's why they found him.
That 16-year-old RJ Soldao had been abducted by masked men who were really looking for his brother. His parents heard nothing about him until this night.
Going on here?
So now they're taking the body to the funeral parlor, and the family's going to follow.
All the silence of the night gone. After holding themselves so tight, somehow deep down thinking maybe it wasn't him, they suddenly caught a glimpse of his face. That funeral home. It's strange, those worried parents had already been here earlier in the day, had given the manager a photo of RJ in case his body appeared. This was him. If your impulse is to think the cameras have no business being here, consider some families beg the photographers to stay close. Think maybe their presence, their questions, will stop funeral homes from extorting victims' families. As disgusting as that sounds, it happens a lot. Blindingly obvious thing to say, perhaps, but it is a lot of death to absorb all night, almost every night. In the name of staying sane, the photographers have developed a ritual.
After a long day, it's like you feel having a home-cooked meal or something.
A meal together to close out most nights, because who can just go home without working through all they've just seen? It's a few minutes before 5 a.m.
Do you? Do you actually over dinner talk about what
Sometimes,
you saw?
yeah. No.
Maybe this looks like nonchalance. It's not. It's their everyday, and their trauma sneaks in like fatigue.
Because many of the photojournalists who've been covering this are the juniors. They're not the senior photographers, actually. Yeah.
So you watch out for them a little bit.
Yeah. I could remember one photographer during this crime scene in the rail tracks. When he was covering, he was, pardon my, but he was saying, putang ina, putang ina, putang ina. He was kept on repeating that. It's son of a bitch, son of a bitch, son of a bitch. And I had to snap him out of it. Wait up. Wake up.
For about 45 minutes they sat there, as much about therapy as that needed meal. Brother June is in a hurry. There are already families waiting for him at the church.
You're not going to bed again?
No,
Vince had to skip the meal altogether. His commute is just too long. The street sweepers are already out. Usually they're the last ones to spot the bodies from the night before and send in tips, but if they're out,
Thank you.
and no one has heard anything, then it's over for all of them, for a few hours anyway. If the world is to get the truth about death in the Philippines now, it will get it from them. The Manila morning rush hour is right on schedule. Time to move, to get ahead of the living in the name of chasing the dead.
People in Manila are fed up with what they're calling President Rodrigo Duterte's brutal war on drugs. This latest demonstration was sparked by a police raid that killed 17-year-old Keon de los Santos. He can be seen in this footage being dragged away by plainclothed police.
Kian was a boy who dreamed of being a policeman, and the police people are the ones that killed him and the ones that killed his dreams. What I think is going to happen with the Duterte administration right now is, first and foremost, they have no choice but to listen to the people, and they have no choice but to listen to the sentiment of the people.
Del Santos was one of around 80 people killed last week in anti-drug operations in Manila and surrounding provinces. It's been almost a year since the president began his crackdown on narcotics. Public support for the anti-drug raids had been strong, but there's been a pushback after a series of scandals.
Early this year, there was also a scandal involving a Korean businessman. And then the government said that this was an isolated case. Now here comes the case of Kian. The killing spree in the communities started after the second State of the Nation address, when the president said that the war on drugs will be intensified. So I think this is the time for the government to acknowledge that there was a mistake in implementing Tokhang. The war on drugs is a failure, and it should come up with a new program.
In an unusual move, Duterte has promised to jail the officers behind the killing of the teenager if they're found guilty, after watching the CCTV footage himself.
I cannot discount the possibility, sabi ko na, in my reply, that there is a possibility that in some of the police incidents, there could be abuses. I admit that.
A government investigation will now be held into the death of Del Santos, as well as the recent surge in deaths in President Duterte's drug war. Sarah Firth, TRT World.